Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. We have another Halloween tutorial for you today. This one was a hit last year. We think you're going to love it again this year. Last year I came up with this pattern for Boo mug rugs. One set will make you 6 mug rugs, so you can spell out Boo twice. And it was really fun. We did the original in some cotton and steel, and we used a scrappy background for that. But for this one, we decided we would go with just a plain white background so that the colors would really pop for the letters. And we used Drop Dead Gorgeous, which is a new Halloween collection we got in this year from Paintbrush Studios. It's really fun. It is funky. It's got some pink and brown, which I love when we get outside of like the traditional Halloween colors. But to me, this totally still says fall. And this one is definitely more adult. We've got little skulls peeking out at you depending on where you're at. But the prints are small enough to where you totally get the Halloween vibe and it works. So this pattern is free to download on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. So make sure you check that out. And then we came up with the new kits using Drop Dead Gorgeous. Paintbrush Studios is printed right here in the US. There are very few fabric companies that do that here anymore. So it's a great way to support American-made products and have a little something fun for your Halloween coffee table. So go check that out. We also have yardage available that you can get over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. All right, let's get into the tutorial. We're gonna start by making the bee. All right, so there really is only a little bit of specialty piecing, and then it's all super simple for the bee. So what we're gonna make first is this little trapezoid. I think it's a trapezoid. It's been a long time since I've been in geometry. But we're just going to do a little stitch and flip here and here. It's like if you did stitch and flip flying geese, except they're not gonna meet in the center because we wanna have this nice straight area for the side of the bee. So I've got a couple of pieces here, and all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna flip everything over, and I'm going to draw a line from point to point on the wrong side. All right, now we're just going to arrange these right sides together, matching up our corners. And because there's no overlap, we can sew these at the same time, and we do not need to worry about cutting and pressing first. You can just get both sides done. Now I am there is like a directionality to this, like this is a house that's going up. So I am putting it so that that part is going to be sort of facing the outside of the bee, just because that's how I think it would look cute, but you don't have to do that. You can just go pretty quick with this if you want. Obviously I'm not gonna be able to stitch both these at the same time unless I pin them down. So I'm just gonna stitch right on the seam line on 2 of these, and then I'll flip around and I'll do the other side, and then we can trim these up and get them pressed flat, and then we're ready to assemble our bee. This is going to be so fast. Take the 1/4 inch line on my ruler, and I'm going to line it up with that seam and that line that we drew, and I'm going to cut in my 1/4 inch seam allowance. These are really tiny. I'm sure there's somebody who will do something with them, but I'm not one of them. I'm just going to toss a little extra. All right, we're going to do the same thing for the other side and repeat on our second part of our bee. Now I'm going to take and press these seams open, especially with how tiny this is. I really want that seam to be super flat. Easiest way to do that is to just press that seam open. Once I press from the wrong side, I also like to press from the right side as well, just to get that seam good and flat. Here on out, we have fairly basic piecing. What we're going to do first is we're going to stitch all of our vertical rows together. This is just a bunch of rectangles that we're going to sew and press our seams open on. And then this one, we do have a point that we have to join. To do that, I'm just going to flip that right sides together, and then I like to look at it from above, make sure my points are right on top of each other, and then I pin in the right side of that seam allowance. That's going to allow me to stitch that together and keep those points right in alignment. right, now that we have all of our vertical rows sewn together, we can now sew it together horizontally to finish our B off, and then we're just going to add a top and bottom. Again, I'm still pressing all those seams open. One thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and grab these right sides together here. I'll start with sewing this one together here, and then also here. And one thing that I love to do, and this is why I love to press my seams open, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little better. So you can see right here that little V is created when we press those seams open. I want to sew just one needle width to the right of where that V is created. And as long as I do that, even if it's not exactly a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the seam, it's going to look perfect because you will look like you place that point exactly where it's supposed to be, and you're going to love the results. Now, if you want, and I probably will because we have a pieced piece going next to a pieced piece, and this is a lot of smaller pieces because it's only an 8-inch finished mug rug. I'm going to go ahead and pin at the top, bottom, and the center just to make sure that I keep everything even as I'm going through. There's really no seams to match here because this is going to hit right in the middle of this strip. So as far as precision piecing, there really isn't a whole lot to worry about, except making sure that we're just sewing inside of that so that it looks like our triangle is in the right spot. Alright, our B is almost complete. I'm going to go ahead and flip these guys right sides together, and I am going to pin at the corners and at the center, and then I'm going to sew with this skinny piece on the bottom because there's no seams, so I don't have to worry about anything flipping the wrong way. We can just end up with a nice flat seam. I'm going to go ahead and do that on the top and bottom so I can just sew both and press at the same time. Alright, so we've got our B together. It really wasn't bad at all. We just did a little bit of stitch and flip, just like stitch and flip flying geese, but with a flat side, so we can have that outside of that B. And then just some simple piecing to get our vertical rows together, and then a horizontal, and add to the top and bottom. I do like to give that a spritz with the spray mister and get it super flat before we do anything else, especially since we're going to eventually have a beverage on this. We want it to be nice and flat when we're done. And that's where pressing those seams open really helps because your block is going to lay super, super flat, and it's going to be much flatter than if you had folded those seams under. Then you might have a wobbly drink, and that's no good if you've got some hot spiced coffee. All right, so now we're going to move on to our O. It is almost as simple. We're going to start by making the corners of our O. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a stitch and flip on two sides of our larger squares with our little ones. And again, we're working with smallish pieces here. It's very scrap friendly. All we need to do here is on our backgrounds is we need to line up our ruler from corner to corner and then draw a line so that we have a guide of what we're going to sew on. I'm going to do that for all of my little squares here and get them prepped. So now I'm going to take my larger square and I'm going to go ahead and place my little piece right in the corner, and I'm just going to stitch right on that line. And I'm just going to go through and do my entire stack of that. I'd like to have my needle in the center position for that. I find it easier to stay right on the line when I do that. You absolutely can and should chain piece these. All you're going to do is you're going to grab the next one and you're going to get it all lined up. Lift up your presser foot, leave a little bit of space in between, and just stitch right on down. When you're done, we're going to lay the 1/4 inch line of our ruler on the line that we drew and then sewed over to give us our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're just going to trim off that triangle. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for my other ones. I'm going to go ahead and press all of these seams open and then repeat on the other side, sewing my square, trimming, and pressing. Alright, so we've got the corners of our O's all ready to go. Now we need to make the sides. This is also pretty simple. It's just smaller pieces than you may be used to. All we're going to do is we're going to place them right sides together and stitch with a 1/4 inch seam and press them open. It's totally simple, totally easy, just a little bit tinier than you may be used to. I am back to my 1/4 inch seam for this part. Just like everything else, we're going to press these open because we want our block to lie super flat. So our mugs of hot beverages, pumpkin spice, whatever, is not wobbling. We do not want that. All right, so now we're going to join our vertical rows going on the sides of our O and then the center, and then we'll be able to go sideways. There is a fun little trick to make sure that these line up just right. What you're going to do is you're going to flip over the side that is going to be hitting that, so right here, and you're going to measure in a 1/4 inch and make a mark. So I've got my 1/4 inch lined up with the outside there, and I'm just going to make a mark with my friction gel pen. It'll go away with heat, and then that marks exactly where my 1/4 inch is going to be, so I can take a pin and put it straight through where it is hitting at that seam allowance, and then I can go in a 1/4 inch away right in this seam allowance, and I'm a little off because my edges are not quite lined up. There's a little bit off there, so I need to go up a little. All right, that's looking a lot better. My edges are nice and in alignment. Now what I'm going to do, if I were to move this pin and pin with it, it's going to shift my top one forward and my bottom one back, and then we won't be in alignment anymore. So I'm going to take a second pin and just pin in that seam allowance. That'll make sure when I stitch on this line that everything is nice and in alignment and our points line up just right. I do that for the top and the bottom so that I've got great joints. All of these joints came together really nice. It just looks like it's a nice, smooth, not quite curved because obviously there's some points in there, but it really connects really well. So I'm going to make those same marks when I am joining my slanted pieces to my centers, but at this point I'm ready to join my center row vertically, and I'm ready to join my vertical rows to my horizontal and then press those seams open, and just like before, we're going to add a top and bottom piece. Give everything one final spritz with my spray mister so that I can get everything to lay nice and flat. I like to use that instead of putting water in my iron to use steam because I feel like it distorts the fabric less, and every iron I've ever put water into always spits eventually, and I've had this one for at least 5 years now and it is still going strong, and so that just works really well for me. All right, so that's it. That we've got our O block together. You're going to make 4 of these, 2 B's, 4 O's, so you can have 2 boos all spelled out on your table and it'll look adorable. Again, you can totally use this with Halloween scraps. We use fat thirds in order to make ours. We do have kits available while supplies last. And I just want to point out one thing about the binding. I'm going to show you our set of 3 that are totally done here. So what we did here is we quilted everything going on the diagonal. We just started going straight from corner to corner, and then we did 1-inch intervals. It was super fast. We did a nice little zigzag stitch going around the edges. That way you could cover it on both sides without having to hand stitch, because it's a mug rug, not an heirloom quilt. So, and it adds like a little bit of extra detail too. We just did it all in white and it looks super cute. Now the binding is supposed to be scrappy. There are instructions on to cut it from your fat thirds, and you're mostly going to use your prints for that. But I'm going to point this out because we had 2 seasoned quilters working on our samples, and they've done binding before, so they didn't think they need to read the binding instructions. But we messed that up because they didn't read it. What you need to do is sew all of your binding strips into one large roll like you would if you were going to do it for a quilt, and then just start going. You're just going to go around one end and then secure your binding and end it off, and then whatever it cuts off, that's your starting point for the next one. And the reason why I want to do it that way as opposed to doing it one at a time is there's always a little bit of waste when you start and stop binding. So if you're preparing this one at a time, then you're going to have waste at the beginning of that strip and you're going to have waste at the end of that strip, and you're not going to end up having enough to go around all 6. You're going to have to find some more Halloween scraps. But if you do it as one continuous bit, you'll still have a little bit of waste at the beginning, but at the end when you cut it off, it's just going to be the start of your next one. So you have less waste as you're going along, and you'll have enough to do all 6 of your Boo mug rugs. So I really hope you've enjoyed this. Again, the pattern is totally free on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. If you love having little things like this out around the holidays, this is our first one for Halloween. We have 2 for Christmas and 1 for Valentine's Day, so you can check that out. Just search mug rugs. All the mug rug patterns are free. But we do have kits for this, so definitely check that out. I think you will have a lot of fun with it, and it just turns out so cute. You can absolutely use your little scraps for it, but this just looks really cute all together, and we send you the exact amount you need, including all the scrappy background. You want to mix that up as much as you can because it really just adds to it. I mean, it's scrappy from start to finish. All our prints are scrappy, all our background is scrappy, our binding is scrappy. It just is super cute. And in this case, it's all from one collection, so it all coordinates together very well. But it is just adorable and gets as much fabric in as possible, because I don't know about you, but my addiction to fabric came before my addiction to quilting. So I'd like to use it as much as possible and as much variety as possible. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. And again, go get all the goodies over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Make sure you like and subscribe here on YouTube. And if you sign up for emails over on our website, you get 10% off your first purchase, even brand new goodies like this one. All right, until next time, happy quilting. Fudge. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why you don't silver your pins.